All right. I think I'm live. All right. All right. So I think I am live. So this should be going live. Let's just make sure. I think we got let's get this tested. I don't want to call it that. Hey. All right. We should be live. And I'm recording. So anybody that's going to watch this after, so this would be great. So I'm going to be jumping in. Let's make sure we got OBS right over here. And I'm going to be jumping right in. So good to have you. I'm going to be talking about what's going on with Palworld, what's going on with from Deadlock to Halo. So just kind of break this stuff down. I just want to start doing this more where I can't always create videos about a lot of the things that's going on, right? I just kind of want to cover some of the stuff that's actually going on in the industry that I don't have time to be able to make a video for because there's constantly stuff going on. So basically, I just want to break things down. Why, for example, like why is Nintendo suing Palworld? Kind of break down what's happening there, right? I've filed a patent before. I know about, why basically Nintendo's whole piece is about patents. So I'll kind of break that down. I want to break down a bunch of stuff. So gonna just start with Palworld and their lawsuit. So pretty straightforward. Right, Nintendo right now is suing Palworld, right? They're suing Pocket Pair based around this whole idea of they are infringing on some kind of patents, right? And so what's interesting is I actually know the guys pretty well over at Palworld. So here, I'll throw a blank document here. So I actually know these guys, right? So this is me at Gamescom, right? I was hanging out with Bucky. So this is some of the team members of Palworld. So really, really neat team, really neat guys. And it kind of sucks that they're being sued right now. so I kind of want to unpack that first. So the thing to understand, like I said, is Nintendo specifically is filing because they say that they infringed on certain patents. We don't really know what those are yet. And specifically, we don't know why Nintendo is saying that. We don't know what patents they're saying that Pocket Pair or Palworld is infringed on, and so it'll be interesting to see exactly what's going on. But just to kind of unpack this, I want to be able to help you guys understand why this is actually possible. So I actually have a patent. So I got a few pictures in here. All right, I actually have a patent. Here's yours truly. So patent, there's my name. It's kind of my patent that I applied for. I think this was back on a good few years ago. So like I know the process. I know the process from start to finish, and excuse me, I'm still getting over my pneumonia. But basically, understanding how this is even possible, like how are they even being sued? And so I've gotten this patent based around a software, so specifically like what we call like a digital or software patent, and so the way it works, and what's funny, I think here's this baby. So I actually pulled the sucker up. So there's the patent that they actually give you. So it's kind of like this fun little packet, and it kind of, I don't know, where's the camera? You go through it all. And it basically breaks down all the different pieces of how that patent functions. What's fascinating, though, is that patent is pretty pointless in software. And the reason why is a patent needs to be novel and non-obvious, right? Basically, that just means like when you file for a patent, for them to give it to you, the idea needs to be something that's novel and non-obvious, right? Because if you go and patent something that's like I patent something like a microphone with a tiny tweak, like that's not really patentable because it's something that already exists. It isn't novel. Maybe you made tiny tweaks. So it has to be something that actually like changes or some novelty or really makes some kind of a realistic change that wasn't obvious. And so I just want to show this real quick. So kind of the process. I thought this was a picture. Where's my picture? So let's see. So the process of getting a patent. So if we were to actually like look at an example, we were to say, so normally it's like you have an idea, there's a certain kind of patents that you file based off of the classification of the product what you're doing. You do all sorts of prep, which kind of looks, if you were to look at this, right, there's all this prep work. So you like do all this writing and basically make a bunch of arguments. Where's my camera? Make a bunch of arguments, and within those arguments, you get to basically make that argument to the patent office to see, right? So you send it to the patent office, and then they come back to you and say, is this legitimate or not? So it goes from like, you see patent pending. Patent pending doesn't mean anything, right? It means it's right here at the patent office. When it's a provisional patent, means you've actually gotten it. Right. And so when it comes to Nintendo, they've gotten a few patents, meaning there's some that are patent pending, and there's some that they've gotten in the recent years that correlate with like balls that you throw. That if I remember right, so that their patent specifically was a patent that covers the mechanics of aiming and releasing a Pokeball. So it's like the patent also was. It would change the status if it was owned by the Pokemon, so it would change the status of the Pokeball and stuff like that. So there's a bunch of things that Nintendo has done, but the real question is like, will this hold up, right? Will this patent hold up, and can Nintendo actually sue Palworld, right? So like that's the core piece here, and what's fascinating, it's hard to understand because they're being sued in Japan, not America. So if we were to say like, what patent law, right? So if we were to, like, I was looking at some things that were breaking down how Japan was different than the U.S. and so like how patent law is different in the U.S. versus Japan. They're actually pretty similar. I think the biggest difference is based around just how they enforce certain patents or how they pass certain patents. And so when I was looking at it and going through this doc specifically, right, I think that their core piece is they pass patents more based off of societal good, where we pass patents, I think, a little bit more based off of if it's unique and non-obvious. I think they do have that piece, but so it's hard to understand exactly if this suit will go through or not because it's being filed in Japan. But what I find really fascinating about this and is more that it's not that it'll go through. Oftentimes, it's not that Nintendo believes that they'll actually get money from Palworld. I actually think it's more of what I call the Dollar Shave Club strategy. So Dollar Shave Club was sued by Gillette, years ago. And so they did a patent lawsuit, same idea, against Dollar Shave Club. And so this was back in 2015. And so oftentimes we use this as like something we like to refer to like a case study and stuff like that, is they actually don't sue them because they think they're going to win. They sue them because they think they're going to be able to bury them in paperwork. So like that's something that happens a lot. So like I said, I have a patent, but it really isn't that valuable because it's really hard to hold up in court, right? Any kind of software patents. Like that's the biggest problem, is like, how do you hold this up in court? And so for Gillette, it was a similar thing, is they sued them based off of some kind of fickle piece. But again, they didn't sue them because they actually thought that they would win. But when you have a much smaller company, right, that's potentially going to take some of your ownership of your market, which is what Palworld is doing, you sue them so you can hopefully bury them in more paperwork or scare them so that they can't continue on. So I think what's really fascinating that's not being talked about, I think by nature of just the industry we're in, it's really hard to understand like why this is happening. It's like Nintendo is a very litigious institution, but we're in America, or at least I'm in America, and the U.S. is like, I mean, if you talk about tiers, people in the U.S. love to sue more than anybody else. So, so relatively, it's like I actually don't think it's that unique. I legitimately think it's, my personal opinion, I think they are suing them because they want to potentially bury them from making a follow-up, right? They don't want them to create this huge brand, because if you were to say, like, what's the most valuable brand in the world? I guess I should say most valuable IP. Let's see. Right? You got the most valuable IP. It's Pokemon, right? So Pokemon is the most valuable IP. And so Nintendo is, and you got these people that are coming in with like the same concept, right? All these fun Pokemon and Pokemon Pals, right? It's the same idea. So think about the merchandising potential, about the, all of what it can be, and how that's going to cannibalize Pokemon. And so to me, that's why I think they're suing them. Is they're trying to bury Pocket Pair from being able to continue on with this, right? And so I'm curious to see what happens. But like I said, I'm friends with some of the people over there. I hope them the best. But I legitimately think they're doing the Dollar Shave Club strategy, right? Is just to hopefully leverage this idea of a patent, and that they've broken this patent and so forth. So we'll see what happens. But that was like one thing I've been wanting to talk about. I didn't have time. Again, the reason why I want to talk about these things, I want to do more of this stuff, is there's so many videos I'd like to make, but it takes forever. So I just kind of want to be able to talk about these things pretty quickly, kind of explain at least some of my thought process behind what may be happening, and again, from my experience, what I think is probably going on. So we'll see what happens with the future, and if this actually stands. Again, I think if it was U.S. versus this is Japanese, this is going to be happening in Japanese court, so it's pretty hard to know, like, is this how legit this patents hold up? But again, like me having filed a patent myself, right, and dealt with patents, like this is actually one of the biggest wastes of money that I ever spent when it came to doing anything. It's fun, right? Like it's fun that I get to sit here and be like, ooh, I got this cool looking patent book, right, with like, that gets sent to me from the patent office, and it's like, you could go look up, my name, or where is it? Right, yeah, there it is, right? There's my name, my company, the whole 9 yards. But it does me nothing, right? And so I think that's predominantly in software. It's really hard to patent and actually, like I said, uphold patents in court. And so we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with Palworld, and if if that lawsuit is going to hold, and if they can actually have any validity. And again, I personally believe it's more of the Dollar Shave Club. So that's my 2 cents. I want to jump to the next thing, but if anybody has any thoughts, like I want to, if you're welcome to shoot any questions about Palworld, but I want to jump into, I want to talk about a few things. I want to talk about Halo Studios, what that just got launched, what's going on there. I want to talk about Concord. I want to talk about Deadlock. So if you got thoughts, cool. If not, I'm going to just jump over to Halo Studios, because Halo Studios, I don't know if you guys know what's going on with that, but basically 343 just rebranded to Halo Studios, which is wild to me, right? It's wild to me that they're basically, it's like the same studio, but they just, now they're Halo Studios. So if we were to, I was curious if 343. So 343 is still the still official name. So we'll see what happens there. But I guess formerly 343. So they are changing it on Wikipedia. They just haven't changed maybe some of their their URLs, but so they just basically switched over. And so for anybody that has seen that news, that's a little bit old, but it happened when at the end or during the Halo tournament, which I was watching, and I got to be at the majors in Utah. But so the finals, right, the Halo Worlds, during that they basically announced, at Halo Worlds, let's pull that up so we can see basically crowd reaction. So they launch their trailer for this whole new studio. And why did they do this? I actually plan on making a video that's longer about Halo, but this is really fascinating because Halo keeps having all these things happen, just negativity after negativity. And you'd feel like this would be just another thing that people would just scoff at and kind of make fun of. But actually, there's so much positive news coming out of this announcement, even though they didn't really announce anything aside from moving to Unreal Engine, right? Like if you were to look, I remember I've met Uber Nick, and super nice guy. Like, again, his initially, Halo's future has never been better. Like, positive, a bunch of positive stuff, right? Mint Blitz video, right? Like positive stuff, right? 343 Industry, Halo on Unreal Engine, on Unreal Engine. Halo is saved. Like that's kind of crazy to me because in theory it's still the same studio, but it's so much of this perception that people want this positive news. And I think it says a lot about the Halo community, but I thought that was really fascinating. Is just this huge mental shift, even though nothing has changed internally. We haven't got a new game. They have not proved themselves one bit, yet people all over the place are really, excited and positive about Halo. So I thought that was really fascinating. I wanted to cover that, and hopefully I'll be able to cover that some more. But that was some really interesting news that's going on. So the other piece, and I think the big one everyone's been talking about, right, is Concord. So if we were to go Concord, I think most people have heard about this, but Concord, huge failure, right? They launch this game. I think it was 400. Let's see, Concord, 400 million budget, something along those lines. Yeah, $400 million to make, and they sold 25,000 copies. I think something along those lines. And so, biggest failure in gaming, right? So if we were to say biggest failure in gaming, I'm pretty sure, Concord is probably the biggest failure in gaming industry. So right now, Concord is looking like this huge failure. But what's fascinating is they might be coming back. Right? So I know Charlie did some on this, but dude, this game is all of a sudden, which was the biggest failure of all time, they might be bringing it back. What I want to talk about though is why did this game fail? I think a lot of people, there's all sorts of speculation, and I think most of it's pretty on point. But the question is, why was this game for $400 million a complete trash heap? And I think there's a variety, like I said, there's a variety of reasons, but I think the core one is hero shooters aren't when they started building this game, it was probably when Overwatch came out. They see Overwatch's success and they go, we need to build a hero shooter. But games take so long to make, and so you sit there and go, this ended up being 6-8 years after 6 to 8 years of development. And it's mostly stems from they wanted to make this, but they're so late to get into the genre. It's like the battle, or it's like Fortnite, right? You have all of these, Fortnite, PUBG, battle royales, all of these start coming out, and everyone starts working on their battle royale, but it takes 5, 6, 7 years. And so the genre, when it was at its peak, right, you needed to get a game out in a year, right? You need to get it out then. But they take so long. So Concord takes forever to make. They make a game, a hero shooter that basically is, I wouldn't say on par. I actually think it's worse. But like they make a hero shooter that is pretty basic comparatively to all the other hero shooters out there. And then they have like these super boring characters. It's just there's nothing interesting about it. I think all of this just is compounding. And with that compounding nature, it's why they had a couple thousand max players. I think what was Concord's max player base? Less than oh, you use 700, right? So it's even worse than what I thought. So 700 peak players. And so why was it only 700 peak players? Like it's not like the game, right? If you were to look at the game, like if this was made by by a small studio, I mean it's a good looking game relatively, right? There's a lot, at least there. You know what I mean? Like you stop and be like, oh. And so the amount of people that don't watch the news, all this stuff, like they should have, or at least in some way should have bought this game, right? Like there's good looking marketing, good looking trailers, but it tells you how badly they missed the mark, right? Because they missed the mark so badly that it's like, I think the genre, people are no longer interested. I think their characters and all that did not grab people one bit, which is wild, right? And the gameplay just, they didn't do, not only did they not do anything unique or extra on top of the hero shooter, it almost feels like they dumbed it down and made it worse. So like every one of those elements is, they made a worse game in terms of a hero shooter. The art, the characters are boring, and then also the genre, oversaturated, delayed, all that stuff. So it's seems wild, right, when you think about the amount of money that gets put in. But I think this is a core issue that so many studios in AAA have this problem, is pumping out games 6 years too late, right? Like, to bring it back to Halo, because I was just talking about that. Halo 2, I think, took 10 months, a year to make, right? You think about, like, how fast they made these games back then versus now. So if you were to catch a wave, you have to be able to make a game. So I know this is more targeting developers, what I'm about to say, but it's like, if you're a developer and you see a wave is starting, you have to make a game and have it done within like the next year, not the next 6 years. And so I think there's layers to this, but why Concord failed, I think they basically, how the perfect game hits every mark correctly? Dude, they hit every mark terribly. And it was just like this crazy basket of crap. And so, hey, what's up, John? Good to have you, man. And so I think all those elements stacked up to why Concord failed. And so anyway, so I want to talk about that, but I feel like it really leads into why Deadlock was successful. So I don't know if you guys know what Deadlock is, but what's funny is like Deadlock came out right around the same time as Concord. And it kind of looks, right? If you were to look relatively, it looks similar. So you got a shooter. I was trying to find another game. Like, look at that image. And then look at this image. I'm just pulling these out. Like, they look similar. Yet, this game completely tanked. And this game right now, right, is blowing up. I've been playing it. I've got, like, almost 100 hours in this game. And I love Deadlock, which is really fascinating. So if anybody loves Deadlock, I would love to stream it sometime because it's probably my favorite game right now. But why is this game, a hero shooter, getting over 100K concurrent players? I mean, you got the obvious, it was made by Valve, it's on Steam, blah, blah, blah. But, like, why is this game a hero shooter when I just said the genre seems to be struggling, doing so well? And so I think that's what's so fascinating is this is how you do development correctly and genre. Like, when you actually take on a genre that's maybe been around for a bit, oversaturated, whatever it is, this is how you do it, right? So they took this idea and they said, all right, how do we create a hero shooter that's unique? So it's like, all right, first let's look at the Deadlock characters. So if we're to look at all of their characters, yeah, there is an outlier for sure. I mean, like anything, that I think it's an outlier. So it's a great thought. They didn't have marketing, so they had marketing. You know, they had trailers. They put material out. I'd be curious, how much money did Concord spend on marketing? Right, I'm fascinating because like a $400 million budget. A chunk of that had to go to marketing, right? Like some amount of money, if we even say a few million, right, of that. So so it's definitely some marketing. Some people they paid in some capacity. When you have a $400 million budget, you know, I'm arguing that maybe even $100 million probably went to marketing. The thing about marketing, though, especially in our day and age, marketing is so different than it was, you know, 20 years ago, which was different than 40 years ago, right? Marketing continues to shift and change. Marketing is so odd. It's all about tailored and personality tailored marketing now, right? Because Facebook, they know who you are. Google knows who you are, and all this stuff. I think their marketing, why you maybe didn't feel like you saw it, was so bad because it didn't. Their game doesn't target anybody, meaning like it probably didn't grab your attention. Marketing is all about getting a ton of touch points. They usually say it takes about at least 7 marketing touch points for you to even start considering to buy something. So you need to see something 7 times. So you probably saw it, and maybe you saw it multiple times, but it was just so unappealing, you didn't even care. So I'm not saying that's true, and they probably spent less on marketing. But like you are right, like it is an outlier in a way that like they spent money, right? Like I'm trying to reread. So like it's been a few inspiring AAA titles in recent years, but most still grabbed quite some money. Like it is fascinating that like it did so bad. So, but again, I really think it's an outlier. There's reasons, there's logic behind it, and I think the logic is kind of what I just said. Like I think there are these pieces to it, and each one literally just made it worse and worse and worse. Just like the more you do, like the more marketable your game is, right? The more marketing you do and you actually target the right audience, maybe the more unique you're, like all these, there's all these pieces, and that compounds positively. And this, I felt like compounded negatively. And that's why it was literally, again, it is an outlier, but there's like a really interesting lesson to learn from that. But yeah, like Deadlock, it has, and I see your comment, but it's like Deadlock definitely has a better direction and style for sure, right? If you were to look at Deadlock's art, at their character designs, right? Like it's so different. Where'd that go? Right? Like these designs are so cool and unique and fun. But again, like, and this is where I think it compounds the other way. They took a genre which was probably oversaturated, right? There was a bunch of hero shooters, people have been coming out with them, and they said, how do we do unique twist? And they chose a MOBA, right? Like, so a MOBA, League of Legends, Dota, Heroes of the Storm. I got thousands of hours in these kind of games. And so they chose this kind of laning genre, 6v6, and applied that to this hero shooter, right? All these different ways that, you know, you can kind of play. And a lot of people kind of compare it to Smite. So if you guys know what Smite is, you know, people say, oh, it's like a third-person MOBA, right? Which they're like, oh, it's like Smite. But it's like Smite, you can only hit things that are in a lane. It's basically just an over-the-shoulder type of MOBA where, you know, you're not looking up and down. Where Deadlock takes the best of a shooter. So go back to where's my Deadlock imagery. So like it takes the best of a shooter. So if you were to like look at the Deadlock map, right? You can look up, down, left, right. You're looking everywhere. And this is something that they really applied this. And I'm not saying that that's why it is successful. I'm saying that they took it a genre that existed. They added a unique twist. They added these layers. And they almost like, attack the MOBA scene, because I loved, and I've like I said, I've been playing since the original Dota. I played it on the Warcraft 3. I played Dota 2. I played League of Legends, and then I switched to Heroes of the Storm, 2015, 2016, and I've been playing that, and I have over 1,000 or 2,000 hours in that game. So it's like, I love MOBAs, and I was craving something new. I like shooters. And so it's like, anybody that likes MOBAs, a lot of them have shifted over because this was something new, unique. There wasn't a ton of movement here, and there wasn't a lot of new games, right? It was pretty, like, almost every, Dota 2 and League had, like, everybody locked down. But then they also added this layer where, like, a bunch of shooters, a bunch of my buddies that play shooters have come over and never played a MOBA before. So I think this is how you cross genre, right? How do you mix genres, and how you take, like, something like a hero shooter that's maybe oversaturated, and this is the unique twist. And so this is why I think Deadlock has been so successful, and it's still in its alpha or beta. I don't know however they're classifying it, but it's like, it's still early game. The game's not even out, and it's consistently getting hundreds of thousands of players every day, versus Concord, which couldn't get over 700, wherever that number was. Getting 700 a day, right? Like, here it is, right? I think their max was 697. Like, that's wild. And so I think, and there's some thoughts right here, but like, this is the first time you've heard of either Deadlock or Concord. Like, where did they advertise? What's fascinating about both of that? So Concord, I'm kind of right there with you. I never really saw anything, and so I can't say from personal experience where did they market. And so they definitely marketed, right? If you were to look, I mean, they got marketing on the sad side, right? But, like, there's marketing, right? Here's one that's Reddit, IGN. Now a lot of these are the negative stuff after, so it's hard to know. I'd have to go and maybe search through, but they, like, Game Rant, this is Concord reviews. There's reviews done on tons of these different game sites, not to mention probably other types of marketing that was done through Google Ads or whatever it is. So they definitely did marketing. What's fascinating about Deadlock, though, is they actually did the inverse. They said, don't share a game. So I made a video on this, and this actually is what led to me wanting to do this stream, is like, I want to talk about, let's see, how do I go in indie? So, like, Valve literally hid their game. So this is the video I did on Deadlock. They literally hid their game, meaning they didn't want people, like, you had to share it with friends. The only way you could play it is if you got an invitation to play it. And then they were banning people. So Deadlock banned, I think it was the guy from Verge from playing. So the Verge reported, because they basically, Valve said, don't talk about this game. The Verge went against that, and then the guy was banned for doing that. So what's fascinating is they were, so, like, to your point, it's like Deadlock has not been advertising one bit, and they're actually, for the beginning, they were saying, don't talk about our game, which is its own interesting piece. But, like, I think there's reasons for it, but I think this shows you just the power of the funness of a game, right? Like, Valve has not advertised this one bit, and all just the people that have shared it, right? People are sharing it left and right. And so, anyways, I think that's a really prime example of, like, the power of just word of mouth, and why you don't even need marketing in a lot of situations. But yeah, anyways, there's a lot of pieces to that. But, like, you like shooters, I'm seeing this. You never played a MOBA. Deadlock was definitely a great introduction. Yeah, like, MOBAs are complex, right? They come from the old era of RTS games, right? Oh, like, back when games were a little bit more complex. And a lot of times games have gotten simpler in different ways. But it's bringing back in that complexity, that high level, that high skill level, and mixing that with shooters. So it's a really, really fun game, really fascinating game. But, like, why do I think it's successful? I really think it's the inverse of what happened to Concord. right? I think Concord was this hero shooter that just made a bland experience of what already pre-existed, was already oversaturated, and it just, for all those reasons, it's why literally nobody cared, even though they put in so much money. And then why Deadlock, with zero marketing, all this stuff is blowing up, because they did all the right things. But yeah, now I got to make a video on the mustache. Yeah. how I got the mustache? Basically, all that is not some secret. I had a beard and then shaved the beard to go as Ted Lasso for Halloween, and a bunch of people asked me if my mustache was fake, and a bunch of people were like, dude, the mustache. So I guess that's where the mustache has become the staple. So there you go. But yeah, and I think Nintendo's got to sue Dave Grohl. I don't know what's going on there, but yeah, Nintendo is fascinating that they just kind of sue people. They are very picky about how their IP is perceived, right? And I talked about that with that Fortnite video I did. Trying to remember which one that was. I don't remember. Anyways, but I did a video that basically talked about that, which was Nintendo's really protective of their IP. They don't want anybody utilizing their IP in a way. It's why you don't see Mario in Fortnite. They want to make sure their characters are used in a specific way. So that's why they always get really angry at YouTubers that use any of their stuff. It's why they're butts about Super Smash in the competitive scene. So yeah, it is crazy, how they can, sophisticated publisher can screw up so bad. And that actually is like a really solid segue. I want to talk about Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed. So you guys, for those that haven't been following, so Ubisoft is struggling, right? So let's talk about that. So Ubisoft right now is struggling, right? Star Wars Outlaws did poorly. Assassin's Creed Shadows has just delayed, and potentially, right, Tencent is buying Ubisoft, right? So there's this whole conversation right now is Tencent is considering buying Ubisoft because they're struggling. So like going to that point, right? So you have this sophisticated publisher. How long has Ubisoft been around? Excuse me. Sounds great, right? That's the beauty of pneumonia. Ubisoft is how old? So if we were to see, how old is Ubisoft? All right. Talk about a sophisticated publisher, or at least in theory, right? They've been around since the 80s. And they've been growing, right? If we were to say Ubisoft's, let's see, like, I wonder what their stock growth. So if we were to like look at stock growth over the years. So this is back in 2011. This is probably when they went public. So what year is that? 2008. They go public. They were started in 80s. So it took a while. They were a private company, and they just grow and grow and grow. And they could grow until 2018. So what's their stock? Stock's at $22. There's a sophisticated company, right? This is a sophisticated gaming company. Just like, I don't remember exactly who the publisher. I know Sony was part of the Concord, who was Concord's. So, I mean, the publisher is Sony, but the developer, so Concord's developer, Firewalk Studios. So, I don't know much about them, but like probably a bunch, smart cookies, right? I bet you, they made a game. They made a quality, at least in terms of like, mechanically, probably a quality game. So what's going on? Like, why is Ubisoft tanking? Why is Assassin's Creed delayed? Because there's like so much backlash. There's a lot of issues surrounding that. Why did Star Wars, which is like one of the greatest IPs in the world, why did their Star Wars game completely tank? It's like all these pieces, which is crazy to understand. Like, how is that happening when you have these sophisticated publishers? And I think there's a variety of reasons, right? Like anything, it's never just like this is the reason. But I think one of the core reasons is the obvious of slow movement, how slow they are to make these games. I think it's like the cookie cutter. It's like why did the Star Wars game? So let's see. I think it was Star Wars Outlaws. Not hit numbers, right? So they definitely underperformed. And so it's like, why did a Star Wars game, which has insanely popular IP, I mean, you can have like, is the Star Wars IP in decline? Probably. So people care less about Star Wars. So there's that piece. Is it that, they made a game that's boring? There's probably some elements. I haven't played it. I know some people that really enjoy it, but it's like what did they do, right? Was it, and a lot of it, I think it's apathy. I think that like it's hard to quantify, but I think a lot of the reasons why these games, it feels apathetic, right? The people that are making them, and I think that's a piece here, is like the developers are just going through the motions, and like if you were to think about like indie games, in theory, indie games should not be successful compared to AAA, right? From a money, from a budget, all these things, yet they are. And I think it really stems from like passion and apathy. It really feels like indie developers, they come from this area of passion, and it's why they can make a game that is simple, that is small, but it's fun, and you can feel the passion, and I feel like that draws you, right? Creative works is all about passion, right? Why is AI? I can generate an image in AI that is beautiful, but I don't care. But I have this person, that makes this less pretty, less appealing artwork, but I can understand the passion behind it. I think that's the key piece here. It's like, how can they mess this up? I really think it's like the corporatization of creativity in some aspect, right? It's they're trying to corporatize and systematize all of this creativity, and I just don't think, like, it's hard to be efficient. Like, as somebody that writes, I write and I create these videos. Like, I wish I could be more efficient, meaning I could get more videos out, but sometimes it's just like I can't be efficient. If it's not there, it's not there. And so I think that's a big piece here. Is like you have people trying to create efficiency out of making these games, and they're losing the passion. So that's my 2 cents. But yeah, it's interesting how much consolidation has happened in the game industry in the past 3 years. Yeah, like that's, and even the software, because it's not just gaming, right? If you were to say all the layoffs in software, and so I wonder if there's some kind of imagery, right? Like, look at the tech layoffs. That's a terrible image, or is it just taking forever to load? But here's a better one. So these are the tech layoffs, right? And so I think, yeah, in Ubisoft and all these, everybody made these huge predictions in 2020, right? Whereas here's some company layoffs. I wonder if there's, anyways, there's all sorts of layoffs that are going on right now, and I think, again, to unpack that, it comes from, like, I'll use my experience when I was at Google. A lot of what the work I did was projections. So it's basically you are projecting, you're taking the numbers from the past, and you're saying, based off these numbers, I believe we're going to be able to do X, right? We're going to be able to find. Oh, sorry. One sec. I got a call coming in. I'm using my phone. My bad. All right. So anyways, I'm back. But like the key piece here to understand is that when you make projections, you're using numbers of what's going on in the moment. And so what I think a lot of these companies did is 2020 hits, and there's this boom. There's like this huge surge in gaming, right? There's this huge surge in people buying games. There's a huge surge in people watching games, all this stuff. And so they just hiring spree, the growth. I think it's the reason why Microsoft even wanted to buy Activision Blizzard, and why they bought it definitely for overpriced. Like all these pieces. because they were predicting that it was just going to continue this growth, which was just, it was what we call seasonal growth, meaning something was happening and this isn't something that you should and will reflect the future, right? Something that's either seasonal or situational. And like I said, when I was at Google, like you would take the numbers of like the past few quarters, and you would say, based off of that, I believe we're going to have these numbers plus this projected growth, 25%, 10%, whatever it is. And you just kind of, you'd factor that in. And so what I think these companies did is they said, well, look at this growth, you know, and they kept putting that into their forecasting, saying, hey, well, we think we're going to have, look at the last few quarters, and if we continue this trajectory, right, continue this growth, we're going to be here. And so there's this huge hiring spree. So all this money and all this, you know, growth, right, and you know, stocks go up. And also the stocks go up because, you know, they're pumping money into the economy with, you know, across the world, money's being pumped into the economy. When you pump money into like the stock market and stuff like that, that's going to increase value. Increased value is going to mean more capital to utilize at these companies, right? Like it just spirals. And so with all those pieces, right, like, you know, then what happens is, so like, okay, so let's, like, I wonder if we were to say, you know, Blizzard's, I would probably not Blizzard because they're sold off. Let's do EA stock, right? Like, let's see what's happened over the, I should just go to this EA, maybe actually spell it out. Okay, maybe Electronic Arts. Okay, cool. So let's look at the past 5 years. And look, theirs has continued, which is actually impressive. They had some dips, but no, they've continued. So I'd be curious to understand what they've done. But like a lot of these companies, I think projected a lot more growth than they thought. I guess some of them though. I mean, again, this counteracts what I'm saying right now. Like, look at that growth, which is really fascinating. But they have fired off a bunch of people. Yeah, and yeah, going to your projections can be so tricky without enough data. And it's like, again, it's data. When I did these projections, I would do it based off of the last 4 quarters. I'm not doing them off like the last few years. So if you're in 2021 and you did the projections off like the last 4 quarters, it's like, that just shows huge growth. And so, I don't know. It's fascinating. So like, why all this failure? Why all this firing? I think the other piece to this is like, why are they firing? I think a lot of it is like and I mean, you got the obvious answer. I think that they're firing a lot of people because it's, I think, AI, which I don't know how much is that relevant. I think a lot of it is they're trying to make things look better, right? People are the most expensive thing in a company, especially gaming companies, because like what makes like a gaming company is people. You need people to make games. And so I don't know. A lot of it is a numbers game, right? The more people you get rid of, you can lower your costs, which then shows a greater profit, which, you know, so there's pieces to unpack there, but I don't know, the consolidation of gaming, I think, again, so much of the industry changed just even the past few years. It'd be really fascinating to see what happens. You know, I hope the best. I know a lot of people have been laid off. I mean, I've been hit pretty hard, just my own stuff by nature of just stuff that's been happening the past few years. So it's wild for sure what's going on in the industry, and I'm curious to see what happens next, and I'm curious to see, but yeah, anyway, so all these pieces kind of, and I was circling back to like Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed, right? So if we're to go back to Ubisoft's stock, and they've been really wild because they've been declining, right? So here's their decline. So here's the boost that I was more expecting from EA, but like they bump up 2021, you know, they're living good, and then, you know, it just starts tanking. But they had this recent boost, if you can see. So they were down to $2. Let's see. Here it is. And I think that was when some of the speculation of maybe Tencent coming in and buying them. And so, I don't know. Again, like I think a lot of these companies I think making games is hard, right? It's it's entertainment. Like, we've been making our game for a good few years now, and even with all my experience for the past few years, it's like we keep tweaking things, and that pushes out the timeline, because you go, oof, that doesn't really work, whatever it is. So making games is hard. And then you have the also piece, like, I feel like they've become these huge juggernauts and these huge institutions, and it's really hard. I feel like it's really hard to make a quality game when you're such a beast. And like, there's those few examples, like Take-Two, Grand Theft Auto, they make, Red Dead Redemption 2. I feel like there's a few companies that have really got it nailed. But a lot of these big studios over the past 10 years have really struggled. So I don't know. It's always hard to, not necessarily the easiest thing to quantify, because I think it's a lot of pieces. But yeah, I know overall total releases are up. But if I had to guess, in the next 3 years, AAA will have a big drop overall. Yeah, I don't know. If I could, not that I'm 100% like I know, but if I could be in their shoes, it'd be, make smaller games. Like, I just don't understand why you're putting $400 million into Concord, right? Like, that is so hard for me to comprehend. Make smaller games. Like, a game costs $30,000, $20,000, to make. Like, you don't have to make back as much money to be profitable. But if you're $400 million, like, the amount of money you have to make to get that back, to even just be profitable, is wild to me. And so I don't know if it's going to be less releases or more releases of smaller games. I don't know what they do. It almost feels like we are entering like the quadruple A, right? Like, there are going to be these huge games. Grand Theft Auto 6, like, ginormous games that are probably going to be live service and just massive. And then we almost need the AAA. Like, it almost feels like this weird empty space that's not working, right? Like, you got these huge games that have potential to be crazy successful by nature of their ginormous. And then you have like AA games, you think about Baldur's Gate 3, and that's more almost like AAA, but I'm just talking about like amount of money and stuff like that. Baldur's Gate, Space Marines 2, what are some of the other games that just came out? Black Myth Wukong, right? They're like this AA that weren't as big, but like do really well. I don't know. I feel like that seems, if you were to like talk about riskiness, like, make a smaller but like a great game, and that has potential to be really successful. But I don't know. Yeah, you heard from your friend that they're cutting art roles. Yeah, I don't know, right? Like, I know a lot of artists that are being hired and a lot of artists that are being cut. So I think it's hard, because it's like AI can generate a lot of art, but it's not, but like, you need like the professionals to take that. It almost is like concept art. So it almost feels like entry level. The people I've been seeing that are being fired are entry level, because AI does a good job at doing a lot of the more basic entry level tasks, but like, they need more advanced artists, and those are getting hired more, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not saying I'm right, but that has been at least what I've seen. And I think I almost feel like that is what we're going to see, is you almost need a little bit more education, a little bit, those that are like more advanced are getting hired, and we need more people with, and I think that's the nature of I guess society, right? Like, industrial revolution, you needed more education to get higher jobs. It almost just feels like the education envelope is being like pushed further. So you almost need more education, not necessarily education in terms from like an institution, but like, the better the artists, they almost need more of those. So I don't know. We'll see what happens, but that almost seems to be, because I'm connected with all sorts of people in the game industry. Those that are higher skilled within their industry or within their specialty seem to be being hired more, and those that are entry level are being fired off more. So, but I could be completely wrong. But yeah, absolutely split your companies into groups, pick on projects. Like, I mean, there's all sorts of models, right? And you got the Amazon model where they always say, don't make a team that's bigger than a pizza. And I think that comes from like the management side. Like it's so hard to manage a big team. Like I remember I was managing 10, 20, 30 people at different times, and it's impossible, right? It's impossible to actually manage that amount of people, and it falls through the cracks. You have a lot of issues. And so, yeah, the complexity from team management to project management, right? You think about like Halo. What blows me away sometimes is Call of Duty. They have like 1, 2, 3 different studios. So it's not even that, it's like a different company is working on the same project. And I know that there's been a lot of games that have done that. And I feel like you can make it work, but I think more often than not, it doesn't. And so either you got to have somebody, sometimes I feel like it's like the Marvel. You got to have somebody at the top that really knows how to execute, right? I forgot his name. The guy that oversaw Marvel for like the past 15 years. What's his name? Guy who oversees Marvel. Kevin Feige. All right. I feel like, I mean, talk about like tons of different people all doing all these different things. But like, I think because he had this vision, he was able to just, piece and make sure all these things were in place. It worked. But again, like I think he was a creative person and had this vision. But if you have the CEO who's, their vision is build bigger business, it's really hard, I feel like, to have those things. Like if build bigger business is not like make these games great. I feel like there's a difference. And so I feel like that's a big piece is the creatives aren't at the top anymore at a lot of these institutions or a lot of these companies, right? They've been around for so long. They've been replaced now by the business. And so I feel like you need to, the real power is if you can have a creative person who can understand business. I feel like that's when you have magic, right? Like that's the magic, because you need business for sure, right, to be effective. But if you don't have the creative person running it, I feel like it falls apart. But yeah, scope of the game. There's so many factors. But yeah, that some entry levels can be mundane, and that's true, right? If you think about like accounting, you used to have jobs. Their whole job was, they called them bean counters, right? They're moving, and then we have software. So software replaced that, and then like the next layer is, the people that the more mundane jobs get taken by software, right? Because all AI is machine learning. We call it AI. It's data in, information out, right? It's not necessarily it's not necessarily AI, and I've used that terminology in my own videos and stuff like that. But it's like all it is more advanced machine learning, and I think getting more and more to artificial intelligence is coming. But it's like I don't know. We're in this weird middle ground between machine learning and artificial intelligence. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But anyways, I wanted to finish this up. This is fun. I want to do this every week, basically, and I'm still trying to figure this out, but like there's so many things I want to talk about, like what's going on in the gaming scene, and I can give my 2 cents, but like I can't make videos on it. By the time I wrote a video on like Black Myth Wukong, and it's like, it's probably just going to sit on the side. I'm not actually going to release it. It's just because I'm so behind on it. And so I think I want to be able to start talking about certain topics and at least be able to talk about it. Maybe not make a video on it, but at least be able to get some stuff on it, like what I think is happening. So anyways, thanks guys. I think we're going to peace, but I would love to, if you guys have any suggestions on like what you guys want to see, what you guys would like. I think it'd be fun to talk about like current news, but if there's other things that you guys are like, hey, this would be fun to hear about or learn about or whatever it is. Or I'm thinking about like I could play Deadlock and we could talk, stuff like that. I'd like to play a bunch of indie games. I play a bunch, but yeah, if you guys have any opinions, love to hear them. So yeah, I think we're good. So